is Justin Wan from Computer Science Department on medical image processing for biomedical simulation. Justin, welcome.
Okay, thank you. So I'm from Computer Science Department, and my research is mostly on computer simulations of different things. And one thing that I'm interested in is biomedical simulation. Here I put two examples that I'm currently working on. One is hydrocephalus, and the other one is traumatic brain injury. For this talk, I would use hydrocephalus as an example. But here I'd like to just mention quickly, what all this is all about. These are mostly we're interested in the studying of the brain mechanics. So when there's something happen to the brain, not the microscopic. So we are not really looking at the cells level, but more on the macroscopic tissue level. So for the traumatic brain injury, we're looking at the case where, say, during a car accident, when the head hit the steering wheel, okay, like this, okay, how does it damage your brain, and so on. So we want to understand the stress and strain and the mechanics inside the brain. Now, in order to do all this computer simulation, it turns out that it's important to get the right input. In this case, that would be the geometry of the brain. That's the shape, the size, and so on. In fact, we also need to know, that's the skull, that's the brain, and that's other tissues. For that reason, then medical images it's an important part of the research, and we need to get the images and then process the images and get the information that we want. Now, often it's the input of a simulation, but sometimes it could be output of a simulation as well. So medical imaging, it's important to our simulation. It's the post-processing part, denoising, deblurring, segmentation, registration, and for me, okay, my main interest it's in developing computational models and algorithms. So here, let me show you one example just to get some idea what we do here. Hydrocephalus. So for example, I want to simulate hydrocephalus. Hydrocephalus, it's a medical condition where it has an abnormal accumulation of fluid inside the brain. So here I show you the image. So this is a slide of the brain. That's the skull and that's the brain. Now, this is the image of a hydrocephalus patient, and what happens is this: that's the ventricle, and inside the ventricle we have this CSF fluid. And for the hydrocephalus, you can see the ventricle is a lot bigger than usual normal ventricle, and that's bad. You don't feel comfortable, and in fact, you may die. So how to fix it, okay, so to speak. Basically, it's well, as far as I know, it's very easy. Well, we just drill a little hole in the brain, release the fluid, and basically that's what it does. It actually doesn't sound as bad as it's not as bad as it sounds, but once you perform the surgery, okay, now that's the after the shunt surgery, and you see it's much smaller, it's better. It goes back to more or less in a normal shape. Now, what do we want to do? Okay, what we want to do is this. This process may fail because when you insert a shunt inside to release the fluid, when the tissue sort of goes back to original position, the tissue may block the shunt. So the fluid won't come out anymore, and then you will get this hydrocephalus again. So it's important to know what's going to happen, what's the final shape after surgery. So what we want to do is to perform a computer simulation of this process so that we can predict the final shape. Now, one approach is a pure imaging approach. Is this? Take this one, okay, and then I get well, hopefully you can see it, the segment, okay, the boundary of this ventricle, okay, and then we perform some numerical algorithm to advance the curve inside. Unfortunately, it's not very clear. The red curves here, okay, and then after a while, then we get this shape, okay, and then use this shape to predict what's going to happen. It turns out that this simple curve evolution provides a pretty good shape prediction of the hydrocephalus. But the problem with this is that it doesn't really use any biomechanics information, and so on. So we want to do something better. But let's put it aside, okay? Now let's go back to this. Even to do this, we have trouble because these two images are taken at different times, so the scale, the positions are different. So when you shrink the curves here, it may not necessarily coincide nicely with the post-shunt image. So we have to do image processing to align the images. And that's what its registration is about, is to align two images. Now, there are different approaches. One is the elastic approach. Basically, it assumes that these changes in images, think about the brain, it's like elastic. Okay? So think about your brain is like some balloon. Okay? So it changes shape according to elastic models. But the problem with this model is that it cannot really do large information. So here, example, I have this little part here, and let's say my final picture should be this letter C. Well, if you want to start from this one to go to letter C using elastic model, actually it doesn't really work. It just can't go to that part, because when things are elastic, so when you stretch it for a while, then you just can't stretch it anymore. So another approach is fluid. Okay, so that means I try to imagine that my brain is not rubber, my brain is really water. Okay, so this is water, so you actually can flow, and you get a full shape letter C. And that's the corresponding displacement map, how these occurred. The problem with this fluid approach is that it takes quite a bit of time to solve all kinds of equations, and then also has this funny phenomena that although what's supposed to move is the letter C, but actually the background is all moving, which is not supposed to be. So what we're interested in is get a different approach, different models, different techniques, so that I can do this processing very fast and at also large information like this. And most importantly, it's not as blurry as the fluid model. And also, when you look at this displacement, you can see that all the motion or changes only happen within the region that we're interested in, not happen in background. So background is supposed to be stationary, it will be stationary in our model. So finally, just want to show you an example to see how it works, the whole thing. We have this two medical images of the brain. One, we use the fluid approach to do it, and that's the transformed image. And you can see it's a bit blurry, it's not very clear. Okay, and that's the difference of the two images, and that's the difference between the transformed image and the target image. Here we use our approach to do it, and you see that the difference between our transformed images compared to the target one is pretty good compared to the fluid ones. Now, I want to emphasize the quality difference. So I do a sort of edge extraction. That's what we want to do. That's the target. And that's the fluid. You can see the fluid part, it's kind of blurry. It loses a lot of details inside the brain here. But using our model, well, actually shows a lot better on my computer, that you can see it preserves all these little structures within the brain, which is supposed to be there, but it was lost using the fluid approach. Okay, so thanks. That's what I want to say.
We also had an opportunity to see some work that Justin was doing on the, I mentioned at the beginning, on how the brain behaves in an accident. So there's actually a very good presentation on the web, an hour long, on Justin's work, if you're interested. Questions?
So I know you said that at the start that you were focusing on a macroscopic sort of level of what happens in hydrocephalus and TDI, but there are interesting questions to be asked as well at that microscopic level, like, at a smaller sort of level, so in TDI, where are the forces going to cause so much shearing in hydrocephalus, in pushing the brain tissue out towards the skull? At what point am I going to start to cause damage to nerve cells? And at what point is it going to be repairable, that kind of thing? Is there any effort from your kind of simulations to image that microscopic level as well?
Now, for hydrocephalus, our goal is more about the, not that part, is the prediction part. Okay, so when we do the simulation for hydrocephalus, actually we assume that it's a very slow process. We didn't really care a lot about the stress and strain. Although we do, we can calculate the stress and strain information, not showing here, but we do that. But again, the purpose, at least for now, is the prediction part, what's going to happen afterwards. But for the TBI thing, that's actually what we do. So we have the brain, okay, and then during the impact, we want to see the brain will move, in fact, might hit the skull as well, and then we will want to see how much stress and strain at the point of impact. So that's what we do.
In the case of Hydrocephalus, where you're trying to model what the ventricles will look like after the shunt, why would you need to model something that's any different than what the normal ventricles look like in a non-hydrocephalus person? What are you buying by doing all this extra work?
Well, unfortunately, okay, so the patient, see, that's because that's a missing piece. Okay, we don't really know what should be the neural shape for this particular patient. Okay, you know, the patient comes to you after he got the hydrocephalus. He's got this big ventricle. So it's like an inverse problem. We want to figure out what it's supposed to be originally, but we don't really have that information, and we're trying to predict that information by doing all this simulation.
Time for one more quick question. It seems to me that the mechanical properties of the brain tissue itself is really important in terms of defining the deformations. How do you include that in your model?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's actually a very difficult question as well. So we consider different model of the brain to do all the simulations. So we actually have to consider elastic model, viscoelastic model, linear viscoelastic model, as well as quasi-linear viscoelastic models. And then we also try to look up parameters for all these models that from papers. So it's not trivial.
Okay, thank you very much.